In a small village by the sea, there lived an old man named Burmese. He was known for his grumpy nature and selfish ways. Burmese spent his days fishing in the nearby waters, but he never shared his catch with anyone. The villagers often whispered about his miserly habits. One day, a mysterious figure appeared in the village. The people called him the legendary stranger. He wore a cloak of shimmering blues and greens, and his eyes sparkled like the sea on a sunny day. The stranger walked with grace and spoke with wisdom. Everyone in the village was curious about him. The legendary stranger noticed old Burmese right away. He saw how the old man hoarded his fish and watched as Burmese turned away hungry children. The stranger shook his head in disappointment. He decided to teach Burmese a lesson about kindness and sharing. But Burmese paid no attention to the newcomer. He continued his selfish ways and laughed at those who suggested he should be more generous. Little did he know, his actions would soon have consequences. The legendary stranger was about to change his life forever. One morning, Burmese went to check his fishing nets as usual. To his surprise, they were empty. Not a single fish was caught. He grumbled and blamed bad luck. The next day, the same thing happened, and the next. Burmese grew angrier with each passing day. On the fourth day, Burmese hid near his nets. He wanted to catch the thief. As the sun began to rise, he saw a figure approach. It was the legendary stranger. The stranger waved his hand over the nets, and suddenly all the fish swam away. Burmese jumped out, yelling and cursing.
"Why do you steal my fish?"
I do not steal, I set them free. You take more than you need and share with no one. The sea's bounty is for all, not just for you.
Burmese scoffed at these words. He threatened the stranger, waving his fists in the air, but the stranger stood firm.
Change your ways or face the consequences. The sea gives, but it can also take away.
With that, the stranger vanished into the morning mist. Burmese was left alone, confused and angry. Despite the stranger's warning, Burmese refused to change. He became even more determined to catch fish. He set out more nets and stayed up all night to guard them, but no matter what he did, his nets remained empty. The other villagers began to whisper. They said the sea was punishing Burmese for his greed. Days turned into weeks, and still Burmese caught nothing. He grew thin and weak from lack of food. The villagers offered to share their catch with him, but Burmese was too proud to accept help. He shouted at anyone who came near. His anger and bitterness grew with each passing day. The legendary stranger appeared again. He found Burmese sitting on the beach, staring at the sea.
It's not too late. Open your heart, share what you have. The sea will provide again.
"Leave me alone. This is all your fault."
The stranger sighed sadly and walked away. He had hoped Burmese would learn his lesson, but the old man's heart remained closed. The villagers watched with concern. They wondered what would happen next. They could feel a change in the air, like the calm before a storm. As time passed, Burmese became desperate. He decided to steal fish from his neighbors' nets. Under the cover of darkness, he crept along the beach. He took fish from every net he found. Burmese thought no one would notice, but the legendary stranger was watching.
The next morning, chaos erupted in the village. Everyone discovered their nets were empty. Accusations flew back and forth. No one suspected Burmese at first. He was too old and weak, they thought. But the legendary stranger knew the truth. He gathered the villagers and revealed Burmese's theft.
The villagers were furious. They had always been kind to Burmese despite his grumpiness. Now they felt betrayed. Some wanted to punish him severely. Others called for him to be banished from the village. Burmese stood alone, facing their anger. For the first time, he felt ashamed of his actions.
Burmese has done wrong, but remember, we all make mistakes. Let us give him one last chance to make things right.
The villagers grumbled but agreed. They turned to Burmese, waiting to see what he would do.
"I am sorry for what I did. I promise to return all the fish I have taken. I will help anyone who needs it." Burmese looked at the angry faces around him. He realized how much he had hurt his neighbors. For the first time in years, he felt regret. With a shaky voice, he apologized. He promised to return all the fish he had stolen. He even offered to help others with their fishing.
True change comes from within. The villagers were surprised by this change. Some remained doubtful, but others were willing to forgive.
As Burmese began to make amends, something magical happened. The sea seemed to come alive again. Fish returned to the village waters in great numbers. Everyone's nets were full once more. Burmese worked hard to help his neighbors. He shared his catch and even taught young children how to fish. Slowly, the villagers' trust in him grew. Burmese found that giving brought him more joy than hoarding ever had. But the story doesn't end there. The consequences of Burmese's past actions were not yet fully paid. One stormy night, as Burmese was checking his nets, a giant wave swept him out to sea. The villagers searched for days, but he was never found. They mourned the loss of the man who had finally learned to be kind. The disappearance of Burmese left the village in shock. Many wondered if this was the final consequence of his earlier misdeeds. The legendary stranger gathered everyone on the beach. He spoke of the importance of kindness and forgiveness. He reminded them how Burmese had changed in his final days.
Let Burmese's story be a lesson to us all. Our actions, good or bad, always have consequences, but it's never too late to change.
The villagers nodded solemnly. They realized that Burmese's tragedy could have been avoided if he had learned this lesson earlier. From that day on, the village changed. People became more generous and caring. They always made sure to share their catch with those in need. They taught their children the importance of kindness and community. The memory of Burmese served as a constant reminder of the consequences of selfishness. As for the legendary stranger, he vanished as mysteriously as he had appeared. But his teachings lived on in the hearts of the villagers. They often told the story of Burmese and the stranger to their children and grandchildren. It became a beloved tale, reminding all who heard it about the power of change and the importance of treating others with respect and kindness.